When it comes to speaking, you are the star of the stage. This is important when you're preparing your speech because each one of you, as a student of Bastyr, are learning an expertise. So when you're writing your speech, you want to think of yourself as an expert. Why this is important is you don't want to be wishy-washy. You don't want to put in words like I think, I believe, because this diminishes your ability to be an expert. If there is controversy on something you're talking about, you can mention the controversy and say something along the lines of experts. On my end, we believe this. You want to position yourself as an expert because you're here to help your clients, and you can help your clients by positioning yourself as an expert. But at the same time, the audience is your subject. You want to tailor your speech to your audience. You want to tailor your speech to where they are and who they are. And the important part about this also is you want to speak to your audience. However, a lot of public speakers get into this idea that they're speaking to a crowd. Right now, it might look like I'm speaking to a crowd of people. That is only half true. The reality is I am speaking to a lot of individuals. Each one of you are having a conversation with me in your head, and it's different for each and every one of you. For instance, if I say, what is your favorite color? Who here thought of a color? Chances are, okay, who thought of red? We have one. So there's proof. Each one of you are having a separate conversation, which is why you want to use you when you're talking to people, because that's where you're talking to. You want to use you, and you don't want to use we and us and they in a sense, because that kind of diminishes your message. Because you want to convey to your audience, you want to convey to that individual that they need to do something. They need to believe something. So you want to say you this, you that, and you want to eliminate I as much as possible. The audience is your subject. You're not the subject of your speech. You can be subject to parts of your speech, as throughout my speech today, I will be using I statements when I'm talking about me. But for the most part, I'm going to be saying you. One instance is at the introduction level, people say something along the lines of, I'm going to speak about. Well, of course you're going to speak about it. Why else are you up here? When it comes to writing your speech, it's best to outline it. What you're looking at now, this is the outline of the speech that I'm giving right now. This is actually how I wrote my speech. All I wrote down were ideas. I know what public speaking is, and I have ideas. When I first started public speaking, when I first started in Toastmasters many years ago, I would write down my speech. Turns out you speak about 100 words an hour on about. So you're giving a 5 to 7 minute speech in Toastmasters, that's 500 to 700 words. And in Toastmasters, you get this cool thing called the Competent Communicator Manual, which helps you step through public speaking, and all the speeches are between 4 to 6 to 8 to 10, so about 1,000 words per the most you're going to write, 1,000 to 1,200. When I got really excited, when I finished it, you get 2 free advanced manuals, and the one I picked out was Entertaining Speaker, because I wanted to be entertaining, and I also got the Professionally Speaking Manual. And when I first looked at that, all the speeches were minimum 25 minutes long, which means that's like 2,500 to 3,000 or more words. And better yet, if you're going to speak for 50 minutes, which I'm probably going to do today, that's 5,000 to 7,000 words. That's practically writing down an entire novella every time you're going to speak. That takes a lot of time, it takes a lot of effort, and it puts a lot of pressure on you to remember your speech. So when you outline it, not only are you giving yourself an avenue to better remember your speech with the ideas instead of trying to remember every line of your speech, you're giving yourself a little bit more flexibility if you want to move things around. As you notice, this speech has a structure. And speeches do have structures. The basic structure of a speech is an introduction, body, and a conclusion. And what I'm going to pass around is the speech template I use to write all my speeches. The speech template that I'm passing around is something that I use as when I first write a speech to help make it compelling and fun. So let's start with the first part of the template, the introduction. The introduction is to get the audience interested in your speech, why they should continue listening to you. Which is why you want to start with a hook. You want to hook the audience's attention. You want to say something at the beginning of your speech that makes them want to continue to listen to you. You want a powerful statement, something amazing, something awesome, something that there's no better way to build your business than public speaking. You want to ask questions. You want to ask questions that are tailored to the audience. If you're talking to people who don't know or have questions about public speaking, do you have questions about public speaking? The idea of the questions is you want to ask questions that the audience will answer yes. It's actually a little NLP trick. The more times you can ask a question in your speech where the audience answers yes, the bigger chance they're going to buy from you because they're agreeing with you over and over and over and over again. So you really capture their attention, get them to a yes, or give them an amazing, awesome fact that just blows their mind. Something along the lines of, did you know 80% of all statistics are made up? And when they listen to your awesome, amazing fact, they're going to be wondering, wow, that is amazing. How are they going to back it up? And the first part about backing it up is telling them why they should listen to you. A lot of speakers, when they first start out, make the mistake of starting here, telling the audience who they are and what they do. You want to do that after they want to listen to you. After the hook, you want to tell them why they should listen to you. Why should they focus on you? This is the part where you tell them about your amazing education you got here at Bastyr University, your stories of a few people who have changed their lives with what you are going to talk about. This will bring up this guy cured cancer with vegan diet and coffee enemas, if you're going to speak on that. And people are like, wow, they cured cancer. How is that going to help me? Which is why they should listen to you. Again, you want to tailor this part to the audience. Why should they listen to you in a way that can help them? People do not care who you are. People do care what you do for them. So you want to explain who you are in a way that demonstrates that you can help them. And it's also a good part to talk about your passion. Why do you love what you're talking about? You want to get them excited to listen to you when you're about to explain what they are going to learn. Early on in my speaking, I wanted to sound clever. And what I've learned is that anytime I've tried to sound clever, all I've done is confuse the audience. Basically, people like to be spoon-fed. This is why Star Wars is making $1 billion. At this point, you want to tell them what they're going to learn. What they're going to learn. What you're doing, I like to think of it as you're making room in their brain jar. You're creating room in their neural pathways for the information they are about to learn. You're preparing them. And after you prepare them, you get to the body. The body of the speech is probably the part you first want to practice the most, but I would highly suggest you really get your introduction down, because your introduction is the most important part. If you get your introduction down, they're going to stay with you throughout the body. The body is where you convey the information. In a way, you're filling up the space in the brain jar that you just emptied. And the best way to do that, story, point, story, point, story, point, story, point. Almost every professional public speaker I research all mention story. Story is one of the best ways to convey your message. It's one of the best ways to get people interested in you. Through the dawn of time, since man has passed down message, most of our time, it was through oral tradition. We are compelled to listen to a good story. We remember a story. And a story also helps affect the heart. And when you can affect someone's heart, you can affect their paycheck. You also want to, if you notice, I wrote story point, story point, story point. You want to write your speech in segments. You don't want to write one huge continuous speech. The best way to make your speech is to make your speech in a bunch of little speeches. In fact, the speech that I give, which is my 50-minute keynote, is a collection of speeches I worked on in Toastmasters, which are just 5 to 7 minute speeches all woven together. What this allows you to do, it allows you to be very flexible. Sometime in the future, there might be a chance where you will get to be in a conference of 5 speakers talking on a subject, and you'll be number 3. And sometimes, the first 2 speakers will go 5 minutes over, because some people do not care about other people's time. And this meeting planner will come up to you and apologize and say, "Can you please take 10 minutes off your speech?" If you write your speech in a way that has segments, you know which parts you can get rid of. It is that easy to be flexible. Or if they do something awesome and say, "You have an extra 10 minutes, how would you like to use them?" Well, you can plug in one of your stories that you can put in. This also allows you to use the same speech over and over again. You might be in a situation where you have a 20-minute presentation. You might be in a situation you have a 40-minute presentation. You might be in a situation you have a 60-minute presentation. So keeping your speech written this way allows you to be flexible, so it's not as daunting at as much time. As I said, my speech is a bunch of smaller speeches woven together. And to keep them all sound like one speech, I like to work on my segues. Segues are connecting points between one point to another. And when you create segues in your speech, it helps your speech flow. In Toastmasters, you get verbal feedback. And one of the verbal feedbacks I generally get with my speeches is that my speeches generally flow really well. And this is because segues. And another thing that's really cool about segues is it helps you remember your speech. If you remember the line between this point and the next point, it makes it much easier to remember what your next point is. Another thing that I forgot to talk about in here is one of the beauties of having it segmented like that is the fact that the average human being's attention span is 7 to 12 minutes, which means as much time as someone can really concentrate on a subject is 7 to 12 minutes. So if you keep on having stories within it, you kind of break your concentration. You break the concentration of your audience. And though it makes it easier for them to listen to you for a bigger amount of time. And you want to think of each one of these segments as its own mini speech. You want an introduction, the body, and the conclusion. So you'll get to a point, and then you'll ask another question, and then the person will then think of the question. Or if you've ever been to a personal development seminar, one thing they'll do is say, tell the person next to you, "That's amazing." Give them a high five and say, "That's fun." That's a way to break up that concentration. That's why they do it, so you're not bored. As you continue with your segues and you continue down, finally you get to the conclusion. The conclusion of your speech is where you get the audience to remember who you are. This is what they're going to walk away with. It's important to work on your conclusion, as your conclusion is now your second most important part of the speech. This is what they're going to remember the most, which is why the first part you need to tell them what they just learned. In the introduction, you've created the room in their brain jar. In the body, you filled it up. In the conclusion, you're sealing it so they can remember. One of the tips that I've learned over and over again to remember people's minds, to remember people's names, is repetition. When you meet someone and they're like, "Hi, I'm Bob," you're supposed to say something along the lines, "Hi, Bob, it's a nice day outside, isn't it, Bob? Well, talk to you later, Bob." Then you remember Bob's name. It's the same thing for your speech. You want people to remember, so you need to repeat it. You say it in the intro, you say it in the body, and you say it in the conclusion. Now that you know how to what you learned today is how to write introductions. You need a hook. And then in the body, you need to fill it, and in the conclusion, you need to seal it. And after you do that, call to action. What do you want your audience to do? Well, you need to tell them, or they won't do anything. You kind of want two call to actions. One call to action is what they can do today different in their lives because they listen to you. This call to action is important because you want to give value for your speech. Not just value for hiring you or working with you, value for them spending their time with you. Because it makes them feel good, and two, if you give them something good for free, imagine what they get when they pay you. And then you want to tell them how to get it to the point where they pay you. Do you want them to go to a website? Do you want them to email you? Do you want them to call? Invite them to work with you. And after you get to that point, you need to wow them. You want to end your speech with something they can remember. A short, powerful story, a question, something that will get them off their butts. Imagine yourself 10 years from now, not changed. What are you going to do today to make sure you change? Something along those lines. Something that gets them to really remember you and really hit your point home. And things to work on that is ways to help you deliver your speech more effectively. One way is your body. Your body speaks. You want at best to stand, have good posture, look confident even if you're not. Fake it till you make it. Here is a tip for your beginning of the speech. A lot of people, after the person introduces them, they get up and then they just start speaking right away. One way to convey confidence right at the beginning is right after the person gets off the stage who introduces you, to just sit here, pause, look at everybody, and then start. You want to convey confidence when you're up here because you want to change people's lives. And when you're confident in what you're talking about, they're going to be confident in what you're talking about. If you look unconfident, they're going to not be as confident. Which also brings us to eye contact. Eye contact is important in your speech. You want to look the audience in the eye, which for some people can be difficult, so you can look the audience at the top of their heads. But the best way to do it is to pick people out in the audience, generally in the back, who are you going to look at? These are your audience points. Another benefit you could use with your audience people is, has everyone given a public speech of some kind? Who here has got through their speech and forgot their speech, like midway through, and had to remember? Was the first thing you do is you look up and break eye contact and try to remember your speech. A trick is to pick that person and make that person your remembery person. You're like, oh man, I forgot my speech. Oh, what's my next point? I don't know. And you go through your speech, and you're like, oh yeah, and then you continue. That point makes it look like, if it's not too long, that you're doing it on purpose. And it doesn't break that communication you have with the audience. Another thing to think about is your arms. It's harder when you have a pointer to do really good arm stuff. For the most part, you kind of want your arms in a natural, relaxed state and use purposeful movements. I remember when I first started speaking, I looked like one of those improv games where the person had their arm in the back, another person puts their arms through, and they're like, I'm cooking spaghetti. It takes practice to do so. But you want to work on not having the T-Rex arms and really just flow and be nice as much as you can. This is all a practice. It takes a while, or not, depending how awesome you are at your body. But the next part, of course, your body, is your voice. Vocal variety. Vocal variety is, of course, how you use your voice. The most simple part of vocal variety, and probably the first part of vocal variety you should work on, is pausing. Getting used to silence. If you notice there, nobody died. There is nothing wrong with silence. In fact, pausing is the best way to work on your verbal crutches. I know when I first started speaking, I had a lot of ums, ahs, so, whatever, anyway. If you want to get rid of your verbal crutches, really work on your pausing. End all your sentences with a pause instead of an When you do tell your stories, giving your character voices is really fun. I'm not saying you need to be Jim Carrey up there and just be wild and wacky, but just adding something along the lines of, Bob said, I should go to the store. Just adds a little fun to your speech. And what is displayed there is another easy and effective way of using vocal variety. This is like calling the vocal 4 quadrants of speed and volume. Just changing the speed and the volume of your speech can convey a certain emotion. For instance, making your speech fast and loud. When you make your speech fast and loud, you sound really excited, and then you get the audience really excited. But if you slow it down, you sound authoritative. But if you make it quiet, now I sound authentic. I am talking to you. But if I do make it quick, I have a secret to tell you. See, just little tiny changes like that can really change your speech. A person, if you really want to learn this part of vocal variety, is to listen to Tony Robbins. Tony Robbins will switch this vocal variety, these 4 quadrants, mid-sentence. He'll start a sentence really excited and then end it really soft. And he does that the entire time he speaks. It's amazing. You don't have to do that. But he's a good person to look at to learn that. And just adding this to your speech, especially if you're not a super excited person, adding parts where you do get excited will make your excitement more effective. I probably should have said trigger warning clown. But humor is the lubricant for your message. And I can understand how humor can be difficult. My first 6 speeches in Toastmasters, not only do you get a verbal evaluation, you also get these written evaluations. And one of the people named Mauricio wrote the same thing on every one of my evaluations. You should add some jokes. I did. They just weren't funny. But then I learned the secret to humor. And really the secret to humor is just a break in tension. You kind of build tension, and then you break it. One way to explain it is you get people on brain track on a certain direction, and then you derail it, or you get them to expect a bottle of ketchup, and then you hand them a tomato. The easiest and most effective way, or at least the easiest way to display this in the comedies, is the rule of three. I'm about to ruin a lot of comedy for you, because almost all comedians, sitcoms, comedy movies use this. The rule of three, which is just a list of something, and then something, and then something funny. And it could be the dumbest, silliest thing, but it will get a laugh. For instance, every time you go camping, it's important to when you leave camping, it's important to do these three things. You need to unpack, you need to pick up all your trash, you need to leave your mother-in-law. It's not funny, but it's just, oh, he's naming three things, and then he derails it. Another good example of that is one of the oldest time jokes, "Take my wife, please," which is by Henny Youngman. Take my wife, for instance, and then you hit it off, please. But one thing that's really cool, I said before, about humor, is if you're trying to be funny and people don't laugh, it's okay. Chances are they didn't know you were trying to be funny. You can just move on. And if you were trying to be funny, and it was obvious, that is a great time to make it really funny. All you have to do is point out how unfunny you were. I remember I was working on my speech, and my speech writing coach told me that before you start a speech, you want to diffuse the tension, because the audience is going to be like, what is this guy going to tell me, blah, blah, blah. And you diffuse it with a joke. And so I did. And my joke bombed. It was very bad. No one said a word. It was probably because I just heard it. It was a Dave Barry joke. I will tell it to you now. I'll probably get the same reaction. Once there was this dictator who had a problem with his finances. At one point, they turned the lights off. To rectify this, he decided to show up at the electric company with a big tank. The next day, the power was on. I think this is an effective way to deal with all your debt. But then you might be asking me, tanks cost $1 million. How am I supposed to pay with that? Well, you're an American consumer. Put it on your credit cards. And then you might be asking, well, how am I going to pay off all that debt? Well, consumer, you have a tank. That was a bigger reaction than I got. And what I did, I just said, woo, swing and a miss. And everyone laughed. It's okay to not be funny. It's a good chance to, because you're creating that tension. You can use throwaway lines. In one of my speeches, I even put it into it. I say something along the lines of, words are powerful. That is why they call it, words are powerful. Words are magical. That is why they call it spelling. Somebody will get that tomorrow. Just that simple, diffusing tension is funny. It's interesting to add speech. You want to think of your speeches as roller coasters as possible. As I said earlier, if you can make them feel, you can make them spend. And you make them feel good, they'll spend on you. Spend on you. But I can understand how being humor is scary, so here are some tips on dealing with your nerves. Number one, breathe. It's very simple, but breathing calms you down, and when you're up here, continue to breathe. Number one, passing out is terrible in getting your message across. And I want to ask this question to you. Who in here wanted to be bored? Who wanted me to fail? Look around. No one is raising their hands. When you're up here in front of people, they want you to succeed. They are on your side. They are your friends. Treat them as such. Treat them as your friends. It's okay. And not only that, they're not going to notice everything you notice. You are your own worst critic. I heard this story by another guy who was a world champion of public speaker named Craig Valentine. During one of his speeches, the right half of his face started to go numb, which freaked him out, of course, and he thought that everyone in the crowd would notice. But that's the thing. When he asked people, nobody noticed. Nobody really notices that much about you. And not only that, remember this, you're not Sherlock. Don't go out reading everyone's faces and try to determine whether or not they're interested. Some people's interesting face looks like they're mad at you. Don't try to, really, their opinion of you is also none of your business. Some people are not going to like you. There's probably someone in here who thinks this speech is crap. That's going to happen. But concentrate on the people you can help, concentrate on the people you can serve, and that will help you get through it. And remember that you're serving. You have a passion. Remember your passion and allow that to help you get through your speaking. What was my? Oh yeah. Practicing and improving your speech. If you notice right there, I have a video recorder. Recording yourself is the best way to improving your speaking ability. Anytime you give a speech in public, record yourself. When you practice your speech at home, record yourself. And no matter how painful it is, watch it. You want to look for your verbal crutches. You want to look how your arms are doing. So one way to, when you listen back to the recording, is just listen to the audio. Listen for your verbal crutches. Listen to the parts that are funny, which is actually something helpful for when you record with an audience. There is a chance that you're going to say something hilarious that you did not think was hilarious. And when you get home, you're going to be thinking, crap, what did I think of? What did I say? Well, if you record it, you got it. And remember that a good speech isn't written. A good speech is rewritten. So when you write your outline, record your speech, watch yourself, record it, watch yourself, record it. Eventually, your speech will get better and better and better. My tip for working on improving your speech is not to try to do everything at once, which is one of the things I do recommend Toastmasters, because Toastmasters is an organization where you work generally on a weekly basis on your public speaking. And every time you get up, you pick one thing to work on. At least that's what I did. Today, I'm going to work on pausing. The next day, I'm going to work on pausing. And the next day, I'm going to work on pausing because I had a lot of work on pausing. I would write down a 7-minute speech and do it in 4.5 because I would just speak so fast. And the next time, once I got pausing down, I'm going to put my arms down and not do this. It's a practice. Speaking is a skill. And the more you work on the skill, the better you'll get at it. Now you know how to prepare a speech and how to create a good speech that can help you get clients and connect with people. Today you learned how to prepare a speech, the 3 parts of a good speech, which is the introduction, which helps people, hooks people into your speech, the body, which of course tells them what you're talking, and the conclusion that seals it so they remember you and give them something to walk away with the call to action. You learned about humor and how you could help deliver your speech better with your body and your voice. You learned some tips on how to improve yourself. Remember, record, watch, and breathe. So I invite you to use the outline that I provided to you to write down your own speech and record yourself. If you want, you can contact me at brettdupree@joyousexpansion.com, and I would love to help you better craft your speech or add some punch up to it in a way if you want to take it to a whole new level. The thing I want you to walk away with is, before I came here, I looked at the graduate and undergrad program at Bastyr University. And one thing I felt in each one of them screamed out, this isn't just for the money. You're here because you're going to serve. And remember that desire to serve, and remember that desire for passion. Remember your passion. If you just do 10% of what I said today, but you convey your passion and love for what you do, you will go far in your speaking. So I'd like to go out and make this world a better place. Are there any questions? Oh yeah. Oh yes.
I really enjoyed that. Thank you. I had just two questions. One, I've heard about using a hook before, and so I'm wondering if you could just give maybe an example, just kind of for some reason.
What's your
major?
Yeah.
Naturopathic medicine.
Naturopathic medicine. What's something ridiculously interesting about it?
Just how simple diet and lifestyle changes can prevent a lot of the major illnesses that we see today.
Do you want to simplify your diet? I know right now I'm doing something called 100% food, where I'm just drinking 3 shakes a day, and it's helping me because it's making me not think about it. And that's what got me into it, and that was the hook. So what are people's pain points? And then the hook is tapping into that pain point. What question can you answer that people have? Does it help? Your other question?
Here we go.
Okay.
So let's go. You
No,
go
it's
for a
fine.
second.
Mine's just kind of about the quantifying the words in the time. Can you just review that one more time? Like about how many words
It's about 100 words per minute,
per minute? Okay.
on average.
Okay.
Sometimes you speak faster, sometimes you speak slower. In the World Championship of Public Speaking, they really talk about that because it's 5 to 7 minutes. And the world champion that won 2 years ago, speech was 400 words. But that's because he had a lot of jokes, which is one thing about pausing. When you say something funny, stop talking. Let them laugh. They're not going to be able to hear you. That's something I had to work on a lot because this can be scary, and I just want to get through it as fast as I can. So that's also one of the benefits of recording your speech. When I first wrote this speech, I had 20 minutes of content. And then I was like, oh, I thought that was going to be longer. And so I added more and more and more. And that's one of the benefits of recording. You record it, then you know how long it is. But on average, it's 100 to 125 words per minute you speak.
Thank you.
So do you practice, like, not in front of anybody before you practice?
Yeah.
Before you actually give the speech?
Yes. I recorded myself. I do audio recordings first, so I know exactly what I want to say, because I don't write anything down. So if I think of something clever, I want to record it and then listen back. When I listen back, that helps me remember, and then record. And when I feel comfortable enough with my speech, then I would record myself and try to, if I need to do any wacky things, or, yeah. That's the way I generally work on my speeches. Any other question? Yes?
I was thinking that, in our fields, they're health experts, right? So there's that, I think there's that balance between being the expert and conveying confidence in the audience, but yet I think it's important to be human too. So having those imperfections and making a joke that falls flat, I think that actually engages people more, don't you think?
Yes.
So
Anytime you can.
like, I'm the know-it-all and I'm just going to talk down to you and tell you how it is, right?
Yeah, well, the thing I'm learning more and more is people buy from their friends. So if you're up here and you sound like someone, like, I want to get a beer. I mean, that's what everyone said about George W. Bush when he won. There's someone I can drink a beer with. Which is kind of but while it's a silly reason to become over president, it is an idea that you want to convey to your audience. If you're someone that they feel they can hang out with, they're going to want to hire you. People buy from their friends. Any other questions?
This is more of a just reflection than a question.
Okay.
I really like the point about story point, because I found when I'm reading a book about health, when they give, my patient, Donna, for example, she had hypertension, and then I worked on her with this diet, it just draws you in, and I think in the health field especially, it really helps to connect. People are coming to the talk about their own particular health problem. If you give a case, a story, I think it's a really great way to engage people and not make it so dry. Sometimes be with help.
I totally agree. There's a book I really like called Evolve Your Brain by Joe Dispenza. No stories. It is ridiculously hard to read, but it's very interesting. I love it, but it takes a lot of effort to get through every chapter. In fact, I talked to somebody who, my first public speech was in Denny's in Kent, and I was talking to one of the ladies there about someone else, and she talked about this person talking about astrology, and she wanted to walk out because the person was just conveying information, and everything went over their head. Story helps you relate, because when you tell a story or when you listen to a story, you always put yourself as the main protagonist. I mean, that's why a lot of the top movies that exist, the main star is milquetoast and boring, because it makes it easy for you to convey yourself up there. I mean, that's why Belle is boring. That's why Neo from The Matrix is really boring. Because everybody likes to put themselves as the star of your story. So when you're conveying your story on how health helped that person, they're thinking, wow, that can help me. Any other questions? Awesome. Thank you very much for coming.